ॐ तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविविरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गृह्णन्ति ये भूरिदा जनाः। The nectar of thy words revives the scorched spirit of human beings. They purify the sinner and are the life of the holy. To hear them itself is auspicious and peace generating. They are the real givers who spread thy name far and wide. Welcome to the Friday scripture class. As we have announced this morning uh, through our social media, that today's class will be given by Swami Vidyanathananda Ji Maharaj, Mahan Maharaj. We are very thankful to Maharaj for agreeing to give the classes on Friday and on Wednesday accompanying me. So please stay. Maharaj will be soon be taking the chair. Thank you.
Maharaj. So for a moment, I thought that Maharaj had forgotten this. Anyway, so before we start the thing, just there's some reminiscences of Swami Shuji Maharaj. Nirvananji. So long back, we had read this article which was written about him, where he said that every day he reads the Kathamrita, Gospel of Ramakrishna, and every time the meaning seems to be dawning fresher and clearer as days go by. And he mentions this, that why is this the case? I mean, why is it that that when we keep, I mean, I think this is a common experience with those of us who read the Gospel, that slowly the meaning starts becoming clearer and clearer. And he says that it's not like any ordinary novel or piece of writing till such time as our mind itself develops the kind of quality and insight that Sri Ramakrishna has had while speaking these words, our understanding keeps evolving. So reading the gospel in that sense is actually it's a good exercise. Okay, so when Maharaj told me this morning, so I was looking at doing my personal reading of the gospel, and very fortuitously, the passage that I had come across this morning, it starts off with, I'll read the Bengali, then I'll translate it into English. This is Vijay Krishna Goswami had come to Sri Ramakrishna, and he was working in the Brahmo Samaj. And he said that, look, I have to work in the Brahmo Samaj, so I cannot always come here. And so Sri Ramakrishna responds, দেখো আচার্যের কাজ বড় কঠিন, ঈশ্বরের সাক্ষাৎ আদেশ পেতে রেখে লোকশিক্ষা দেওয়া যায় না. Okay. So what does that mean? So let's read out the passage and then we'll carry on. So this is in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. The date is somewhere in 1882 December. Let's check this. Yes, December 14th, 1882. So that's the day's events that we shall discuss. And so Sri Ramakrishna says to Vijay, come here now and then. I like to see you very much. And Vijay says, I have to do my various duties in the Brahmo Samaj. That is why I can't always come here, but I shall visit you whenever I find it possible. And then it starts, Master to Vijay. The task of a religious teacher is indeed difficult. One cannot teach men without a direct command from God. People won't listen to you if you teach without such authority. Such teaching has no force behind it. One must first of all attain God through spiritual discipline or some other means. Thus, armed with authority from God, one can deliver lectures. After receiving the command from God, one can be a teacher and give lectures anywhere. He who receives authority from God also receives power from Him. Only then can he perform the difficult task of a teacher. An insignificant tenant was once engaged in a lawsuit with a big landlord. People realized that there was a powerful man behind the tenant. Perhaps another big landlord was directing the case from behind. Man is an insignificant creature. He cannot fulfill the difficult task of a teacher without receiving power direct from God. And Vijay asks, don't the teachings of the Brahma Samaj bring men salvation? Master, how is it ever possible for one man to liberate another from the bondage of the world? God alone, the creator of this world bewitching Maya, can save men from Maya. There is no other refuge but that great teacher, Sachidananda. How is it ever possible for men who have not realized God or received His command and who are not strengthened with divine strength to save others from the prison house of the world? One day, as I was passing the Panchavati on my way to the pine grove, I heard a bullfrog croaking. I thought it must have been seized by a snake. After some time, as I was coming back, I could still hear its terrified croaking. I looked to see what was the matter and found that a water snake had seized it. The snake could neither swallow it nor give it up. So there was no end to the frog's suffering. I thought that had it been seized by a cobra, it would have been silenced after 3 croaks at the most. As it was only a water snake, both of them had to go through this agony. A man's ego is destroyed after 3 croaks, as it were, if he gets into the clutches of a real teacher. But if the teacher is an unripe one, then both the teacher and the disciple undergo endless suffering. The disciple cannot get rid either of his ego or of the shackles of the world. If a disciple falls into the clutches of an incompetent teacher, he doesn't attain liberation. Okay, so this is, it was very fortuitous. I mean, it's just accidental that I came across this, and I personally take it as a pet message to me. Okay, very good. So, all right. So now let's at least try to understand what this passage is about. It's basically hallmarks of who the teacher is. And in trying to understand who the teacher is, I mean, since we are reading the gospel, teacher, I mean, in this particular case, is Ramakrishna himself. You know? So, I mean, the rest of the time, let's try to understand, I mean, what he has been trying to say. What are the hallmarks of the teacher? I mean, he speaks in this fairly colloquial Bengali. It's been translated into somewhat polished English by Nikolaji. Sri Ramakrishna did not understand any of this. So, but there is content here. So, and invariably you see that when he says something, invariably there are in the background some scriptural references floating around. So some things automatically come to mind because I think there is this one remarkable article in the Leela Prasanga, um, the great master. Yeah. It's actually written by Swamiji. Inside that, the book is written by Swami Sharadanji, but inside that there is a short little article of 4 pages, which I think Sharat Maharaj had asked Swamiji to write. It's called Hindu Dharma Vyavasya Ramakrishna. What exactly it means, yeah, not as excluded or excluding anything else or as opposed to anything else, but rather as a fulfillment of all things. And there he explains various things, and one of which is what exactly is the role of Sri Ramakrishna as the teacher. Huh? So let's try to understand that. And in particular, he says that he has come to fulfill, not to break down or destroy anything that existed, which is why all kinds of bizarre things like uh, even there's this myth in Bengal that if the lizard makes a noise, then it's supposed to be an approval. In some other place, it's not. But anyway, so mother used to say that that thakur hachi tik tik yo manten. So basically, all kinds of bizarre things. So which means it's basically he does not want to destroy anybody's attitude or faith. So whatever it is, it's a notion of fulfilling of various traditions. Yeah. So let's try to see in various themes that are underlying different main religious paths. What exactly has been said about the teacher? So let's start with what a teacher is not. Yeah. So he says at the end, right? So what a kacha guru, I mean, somebody who just desire wants to has this great desire to teach others, and then falls into a pit. Yeah. Well, basically, that's this parable that he has made of this water snake, which means a snake which does not have the capacity to catch hold of even a big frog. Yeah? So the frog continues croaking, suffering for both the frog and the snake. Yeah? He's basically essentially saying that look, those who want to teach, I mean, who end up teaching because they want to teach, yeah, particularly in these religious matters, ends up causing trouble to both himself or herself and to those who are taken responsibility of. So this actually has echoes, in fact, more or less exact echoes in both Mundak and the Kathopanishad. So this is the passage. Avidyayam antare vartamanaha swayam dhiraha panditam manyamanaha dandramyamanaha paryanti mudha andhenaiva niyamana yathandha. Yeah. So not having gotten rid of ignorance or egotism in one's own heart, but considering oneself dhira. This word dhira is actually Sanskrit is a very precise language. So dhira, we usually translate as somebody who is quiet, composed, etc., etc. But literally, it means somebody who is equipped with dhi. Dhi is, is what we also often call it buddhi, but it does not mean intelligence. It's a synthesis of three faculties: refined emotion, refined intellect, and refined will. Yeah? When these three things, these three capacities that any individual human being has to emote, to think, and to act, yeah? When these things are unified, yeah, at one locus, as they say in the heart, then that unified faculty is what is referred to as the. Yeah? And therefore, all three faculties are simultaneously functioning there. Yeah? So when Thakur says this, Monmu Kakkara, so which means what we are thinking, what we are saying, and the way we are acting, yeah? they are in they are synchronous, they are in harmony with each other, not opposed to each other. That faculty, which allows us to integrate these faculties in us, that's called dhi. So, swayam dhiraha panditam manyamanaha. Again, so think considers himself to be somebody who has this faculty of dhi, and panditam manyamana. So, pandita again we usually refer to as, I mean, translate as somebody who is learned. Yeah? That's not the literal meaning of pandita. Yeah? in Kathopanishad Bhashya, Shankara gives the actual precise meaning of Pandita. It means Panda iti Atma Buddhi. So basically, one whose intellect or this faculty of intelligence, which means the will, emotion, and thinking, intellect, all of them have been combined and directed to this principle of consciousness within. Yeah. That is a Pandita. Yeah. So essentially, considering himself a dhira, panditam manyamana, dandramyamana paryanti mudha. So mudha is, again, this word is the exact opposite of this panda iti atma buddhi. Mudha, this word comes from moha. Yeah. So whoever is under the thraldom of various attachments. Yeah. So mudha means basically, in this particular case, this egotism. I am the teacher, people should listen to me. Yeah. Just today, this morning, we were discussing some individual who gives various talks. We shall leave him leave his name unstated, but there is a novel written by a not a novel, it's a short story written by a um, very fine Bengali satirist called Parashuram. I mean, he's right under the name of Parashuram, Rajshekhar Bose. So he used to write these satirical short stories. He was actually a chemist by training, set up something called Bengal Chemicals. He's a very fine chemist, but his sense of humor was very pungent. So he wrote something made into a film by Satyajit Ray called Mahapurush. So this chap goes around giving all these fantastic lectures saying that he's traveling on a train and then he points to the sun and says, "Ot, ot, get up, get up." Yeah, so he said, then tells other people, "Yeah, every time I have to tell this sun, otherwise it will fall off to sleep, that you should get up." Yeah. So this is the kind of, I mean, so this is an extreme case of this moha. Yeah. Without me, the world cannot go on. Yeah, that's exactly the kind of asinine arrogance that is being talked about. And what happens if such a person takes charge of people? Then it becomes like that snake catching hold of a snake, of this bullfrog, and andhena eva niyamana yathanda, just as the case of a blind leading the blind. That's what. So that's what a guru or teacher is not supposed to be. But then, who is he supposed to be? So Thakur says it very simply that he's supposed to have received this some power, Adesh, etc., etc. How are we to know what that is? I mean, so those of us, I mean, somebody, the same fellow will claim, see, today, so and so appeared to me in some vision and gave me all this Adesha. That's some personal lunacy. It could be personal lunacy or it could be genuine. How are we to test whether this is, I mean, as somebody who, those of us who are aspirants, I mean, how are we to recognize that this is a person in whom that faculty of teaching flourishes or is functioning? And there, these are the qualities that are given. This is from the Vivek Chudamani. Shrotriyo avrijino akamahata yo brahmavittamaha brahmani uparata shanta nirindhana iva analaha nirindhana ivanala अहेतुक दया सिंधु बंधु नमताम सताम श्रोत्रियो अवृजिनो अकामहतो. Yeah, so these are the qualities. Yes. Shrotriyo, which means somebody who has understood the content of Shrotra, means the scriptures. Yeah. Proper understanding. One, but not just understanding, ethical perfection. Abhrajino means sinless. Akamahata. He does not do this out of any desire, which means basically do this and then basically pay $5,000. That's not what it is about. Yeah? So essentially, so this is not out of any personal desire that it is done. Then only one is in a position to teach this. Because if somebody is doing it out of some personal vested interest, yeah, it's going to be morally corrupted. Nobody is going to accept that. I mean, in the end, it's going to be a case of what we had talked about, this some time back. Andhe naiva niyamana yatandha. So first three qualities: Shotriyo, aware of this content of the scriptures; Avrijino, sinless; Akamahata. Sinless means we'll be able to recognize that this person is as a human being, very fine human being. Yeah? And Akamahata, desireless. You will be able to see that this person does not do this out of any personal desire. Yeah? And so I'd heard, I'm aware of this story from somebody who had approached our erstwhile president, Swami Vidyanathananda. So he had gone there and received this, saw this little note that we get during, says various things about that during initiation or whatever, one has to bring such and such, such and such, such and such. So this fellow grew up somewhat taught according to our usual Western style of education. So he looked at this, was very irritated. Yeah. So he went and asked Bhutashanji, say, what is this? People are being told. Basically, this you might have seen this recorded in one of these places that somebody had gone and he had read the Brihadaranyaka. See, some Shishya is supposed to go to the Guru Samit Pani. Samit Pani means with wood for what is this kind of thing? Sandesh, bananas, yeah? Cloth. What kind of stuff is this? Nothing to do. So then Maharaj gave a very nice explanation. He said, see, suppose somebody is coming, stays abroad and wants to visit his parents. He brings them something because he loves them. Parents don't want anything from them. Yeah? So that's the thing. So one should recognize this. That's basically that there is no desire in the Guru. And what is the Guru going to do with some 50 pieces of cloth? He's not going to wear them. So if there is some age-related problem like so many sweets and bananas, he's not going to be able to consume. So what exactly? It's just a token which in modern times takes the place of this summit. It's supposed to be basically an attitude the attitude of submission, willingness to learn, openness to learn that the disciple brings. This is just a symbol of that. Because without that, the teacher's teaching will not be effective. So that's the only thing. That attitude of openness, receptive at framework of mind. This is supposed to be an external symbol. Yo Brahmavid Tamaha. So this is again in this Vedantic literature it says there are Brahmavid, Brahmavid Var, Brahmavid Varyan, Brahmavid Varishta. This is there in Jivan Mukta Viveka. It's basically who knows this reality that one is after. This is Shankara's tradition that we're talking about, Vekchadamani, so Brahmavid Tamaha. And then what? Brahmani Uparata Shantaha. So that means mind has become quiet and found repose in this non-dual consciousness. So one who has found Brahmani Uparata. I think you can call it, does not matter if people with a devotional temperament call that God, doesn't matter. But basically one whose mind has become quiescent and who has found this permanent repose in this reality. And then Shanta, quiet. This is Mandukya Upanishad. Yeah? Shantam Shivam Advaitam. Yeah. Nirindhana iva analaha. Indhana means fuel. Yeah? Nirindhana means fuel is gone. Yeah? So from where? Nirindhana iva anala. Just as the fire, after it has burnt up the fuel, the fire has quiet. It's gone out. Yeah? So which means whatever the desires for action, this, that, etc., all these are like fires burning in us. All that is extinguished. Yeah? It's very similar to this notion of nirvana, as if the fire has gone out. Yeah? Ahetuka daya sindhu. Yeah? without any cause, just out of compassion, daya, yeah? Without any specific, I mean, not to compassion or fondness of some in preference to another. That is not what daya is. Yeah? So here, that is Maya. In different place, Thakur calls that Ahetuka Daya Sindhu. So this all-embracing compassion without reason. After all, what is the point of this? It's basically there's this the in this Vedantic literature, the idea is that one's basic essence is not different from anybody else's. So there is no recognition of the other. Yeah? And once that is there, then the attitude of oneself towards oneself, yeah, natural empathy. Yeah, so that's what is being called compassion, identity. That there is this person in front of me is not in essence different from me. Yeah. That is what gives rise to this feeling of daya. Bandhu anamatam satam. Yeah. So as a friend of all these people, right? So this is the description of a real teacher according to Vivek Chudamani. And how does he behave in another place again in the Vivek Chudamani? He says, Shanto Mahanto Nivasanti Santo Vasantavat Lokahitam Charantah Tirana Swayam Bhima Bhavarnavam Janan Ahetukanya Napitarayantah. Shanto Mahanto Nivasanti Santo Vasantavat Lokahitam Charanta. Yeah? So it's like like the spring breeze which goes around bringing to life the whole earth. Yeah, just during spring, all the after the winter, essentially all the shoots come up from the earth. Yeah? That spring breeze brings to life all that was dormant. Tirna Swayam, having gone across Bhima Bhavarnava. Hmm. Bhima Bhavarnava means this ocean of the world with its terrifying aspects. Tirna Swayam, having gone across that, Ahetu Kanyan Apitarayanta. Ferries others across without any reason. So there are two things I'll ask you to bear in mind, and I think the crucial thing here is this reasonlessness, this compassion without reason. This is a hallmark, and it can only come to people who have reached these qualities, Shrotriyo, Brijino, Akama. Yes. When we see a person with this kind of nobility of bearing, where there is no trace of any egotism, but there is this overflowing compassion, that is a sure shot mark that this is somebody one can learn from. Why? Because if one does not want to learn from him, there's going to be no problem. Yeah, there's not going to be any proselytizing that no, you must do it this way or you must not do it that way. Because that's what Swamiji says. Freedom is the condition of growth. Yeah. So, which means you are allowed and given freedom to grow along your own lines. Not something like you have to do this bring 1 kilo of this and run around the temple 55 times and then go up staircases, make sure that there are 3 steps, etc., etc. None of that. Yeah. Because finally, at the end of the day, it's a very highly personal, subjective development. Yeah? And in some place, Swami Vivekananda says that core religion, not these organized religions, but the core religious instinct is different from every individual. We have different constitutions, and it is with those constitutions that we are supposed to move towards a higher life. Yeah? And at that level of detail, in terms of paths, no two people can have the same path. This is the real meaning of this yatomat tatopat. Yeah? Because finally, mat means what our minds are oriented towards. Yeah? And if you make it doctrinaire and try to plug a square peg in a round hole, it will just not fit. Yeah? Therefore, that kind of freedom does not mean freedom to do whatever you like. Yeah? But this sincere, honest, I mean, the desire being for a higher reality, once that is there and this is granted, that has to be an honest desire. And therefore, people tell us, look, this is hocus pocus. you're trying to cover it up. So I said, no, I desire God. And then what I do, I have this group of 2,000 people and tell them I stopped the sun from rising this morning. It's ridiculous. Yeah. So, so these are, I mean, so common sense has to be there, retaining our common sense. But once that is all granted, yeah, these become the qualities. Tirna swayam bhima bhavarnavam janan ahetu kanya napitarayantah. Again, in another place, yeah, again, the realized that people who are of that order have been described as asamo samadarshina. Sama means equal. Asama, not equal. Here it means basically much greater than all of us. But samadarshina. Yeah? Samadarshina means sees everybody as equal. From our point of view, this person is very different, much greater. Yeah? But from that person's point of view, all are equal. Yeah? I'll narrate this one story. It's not a story, it's a fact. One of, yeah, actually, it's it's happened. I mean, one of which I was personally have aware of, and the other I've heard. Prabhu Maharaj, Swami Vidyanathananda was president of our order, mother's disciple, and he had gone to mother's temple to do pranam. Huh? And his, but somebody who's his monastic brother who was attending to him accompanied him. And when he went to the temple, he was president of the order at that time. When he went to the temple, there was this fellow who was clearly, I mean, somebody who was probably who used to pull a rickshaw or something like that. Some menial guy. It was clear that come with very tattered, dirty clothes. And he was standing in front of mother's, the entrance door to mother's shrine. And he was doing, I mean, conveying his whatever devotion to mother. This person who was attending on Vivekanaji, after a while, grew a little impatient and then was, I mean, about to say something to this gentleman in front. Immediately, Vivekanaji caught hold of him and by a sign, told him to keep without doing anything. I mean, just keep quiet. And after that, this gentleman finished his thing, went off. Prabhu Maharaj did his pranam, then came back. And he told him, see, in her eyes, there is no difference between somebody who pulls a rickshaw and the president of the Ramakrishna order. Bear that in mind when you're doing this. Yeah? So this is the thing, asamo samadarshina. So it's only somebody who has developed some understanding of what samadarshitva is who will be able to recognize it in another. Yeah? So there, because his mother's disciple, president of the order, recognizes that samadarshitva in mother. Because it is only mother who could say that Sharota Ramjad is this Sharat Maharaj Saradanji, General Secretary of the order, such a monk, sannyasi, and Amjad, who is a person who has gone to jail, but they are both equally my children. Yeah? So that attitude, where basically one recognizes that all these worldly qualifications, etc., in terms of even virtue, saintliness or sinfulness, from that point of view, insignificant. That is where one is recognizing the sameness there. I mean, there's one computer scientist in University of Chicago, Ketan Mulmule. So once he privately told me, one person who has really put Vedanta into practice is mother. Yeah. Usually one does not recognize it, but this sameness of vision, yeah, that's what marks out a teacher. Another incident in mother's life, somebody asked her, she was engaged in her usual day-to-day activities. Somebody asked her, Thakur has said, Jhode reto pata. So basically, in this storm, think you're like a banana leaf, used banana leaf. People have that and have food on these banana leaves. After it has been thrown in the garbage bin, And then the breeze has picked it up and it's blowing it hither and thither. Yeah? And Thakur has said, be like such a leaf. What does it mean? And so this young devotee monk asked Mother, Ma, what does this mean? Thakur has said this. Without pausing, she says, I'll say it in Bengali and then I'll translate. Baba, ostitva thakbe, bektitva thakbe na. Simple way. What is it? Astitva. That means existence will be there. Bektitva thakbe, but no personality. That's what it is. See, immediately. And you think about it, this is the profoundest Vedantic thought in such with such spontaneity and such simplicity. Anyway, so these are basically these things make us recognize that these people, they are clearly some other shape. They see, I mean, unless they saw their own essence in us, they wouldn't be able to communicate what they are successful in communicating to us. And clearly, they are very different from our point of view, very different from their point of view. Not. Now, so we've talked about the Vedantic tradition, about what the so this is the Vedantic tradition, Vivek Chudamani, where one talks about these qualifications of the teacher. And so, two things that we have to bear in mind here. First, this is somebody who has reached the peak of what we, from our point of view, recognize as spiritual achievement. One. Two, without, therefore, any hope or desire to gain anything further, because that has all been wiped out, there is this overflow of compassion and help to all others, other spiritual aspirants who want to traverse that path. So basically, in the Vedantic literature, this is called different. I mean, we make various gradations. In fact, there are not. The typical term that is used for such people is Jivan Mukta. Yeah, so one who has become free while living. Free from what? Free from any kind of desire in the heart. But takes up this, what Thakur calls Daya and Vidyanathananda. It's basically the I that acts in the world, which is from our point of view, is one of a real teacher who teaches out of compassion or identity, sense of identity with all others, but without hoping to gain anything at all for that particular body mind. Yeah. So this is essentially what a Jivan Mukta of a particular kind. Yeah. Jivan Mukta who has this power of the teacher, Acharya or Guru, acting through him or her. Yeah. So this is the specific thing. One key point to bear in mind is there is no reason for that behavior. Yeah. In fact, one of the most profound pieces of analysis that is conducted in different parts without any resolution, because you cannot hope for a resolution, logical resolution, is how do you explain Jivan Mukta's Vyavahara? Yeah. Shankara raises this point. And he gives various arguments and then essentially says that look, had there were not been Jivan Mukta's acting, who would be telling us all these truths? And then people say, okay, in that case, there must be some ignorance still left. And Shankara says, see, that ignorance is in the side, it's it's seen by people who are in ignorance. There is not, so which means I am seeing that person as an individuated being who is acting such and such, behaving such and such, etc., etc. But in fact, that individual's individuality is gone. It is we who impute individuality to that person. What is it? What is it? Encouragement to? It's basically trying to ask ourselves, looking at such person's behavior, asking ourselves whether this individuality with which we go about our day-to-day lives, whether there is any real substance behind it. Is this individuality, this perpendicular pronoun with which we behave, act, etc., is there any substance behind it? Huh? And two answers have been given, two extremely polar opposite answers, they mean the same thing. One is nothing. It's completely, I mean, this I is total nonsense. It's said in much more polite language. It's called shunya. That means basically this I has no substance behind it. Yeah? One. Or the only substance behind it is universal. Yeah, this is the Vedanta. Yeah? We are basically trying to point to the same thing, that this phenomenal I with which we behave, there is absolutely no reason to be assured that it has any permanent reality. Yeah. So if one is seeking for any permanent satisfaction, this individual I, individuated I, which after pushing it in terms of reasoning, it does not seem to stand, yeah, is to be basically given up. Yeah. That's the point of it. Okay. So here we spoke of so basically looking at these gurus from this Vedantic point of view, we basically come to recognize they have been given different names. They're called Acharyas, Jivan Muktas, Paramahamsas, yeah, etc. Various names have been given in the Vedantic tradition to such a supreme, from our point of view, an individual who has gotten through this troubles of the world and has brought forth this power of compassion through which everybody else is taught. Yeah? So this is the point of view of Vedanta. I just mentioned two more traditions, and then we'll stop and open up for questions. So basically, Jivan, I mean, that's technical terms, and I don't think there is so much clarity as to what means what. But typically, somebody who has taken up the role of the guru or the teacher after being a Jivan Mukta is often sometimes called Paramahamsa, sometimes called Avaduta in the Vedantic literature. In the devotional schools, more exclusively devotional schools, particularly Vaishnavism, yeah, following the Bhagavatam, yeah, so Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, they're essentially the same thing, but in a different language. It's basically referred to as the Pancham Purushartha, the fifth Purushartha. Usually, the Purushartha means what are the things that human beings aspire for: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Yeah? So these are things that people have heard of. But the Bhagavatam, or people who follow that Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition or various Vaishnava traditions, refer to this particular thing, which means Bhakti Rami is what Thakur calls it in the Katham. What is it? Even after having attained to whatever his freedom while living, Hari Maharaj, Swami Vidyanathananda, he used to say, Jivan Mukti Sukha Prapti Hetave Janma Dharana. This is a passage to quote. That is for the purpose of experiencing this joy of liberation while in the body that human beings are born. So back to the Bhakti tradition, there they call this attitude of ecstatic devotion to a particular form of God, even while free. Yeah, so that devotion does not have to, I mean, it cannot be in silence. I mean, devotion, it requires some kind of an expression. So it could be, in fact, in the Kathamrita Thakur says, Jekhane Dekhbe Uchchita Bhakti, where that devotion is effervescing, yeah, but not with any show. Yeah, but there is a spontaneity in that devotion which comes out. That I has as if that body and mind of that person free while living, which means that separation has been registered of identity with this full consciousness. But with that background, there is an attitude of effervescing devotion. Yeah? So that thing, again, reasonless. Yeah, because there is nothing to be achieved. Yeah? There is, I mean, the devotee at that point of time is not even desiring union with God because that's already been obtained. Yeah? The whole sadhana of such a devotee was to attain union with the personal God. Yeah? After that has been attained, yeah, there is nothing left to desire. But still, the individual's I, what we perceive, is merged in this devotional exercises. Yeah. So this ecstatic devotion of the person, we hear that, we see in Ramakrishna's life, in Chaitanya's life, all these things are there. Yeah. This is referred to in this Vaishnava literature as the Pancham Purushartha. Means it's not Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Why? Because all that has been done. It's been over and done with. But even then, the individual behaves as if there is this no reasonless devotion, we can call it. If the first one was reasonless compassion, yeah, that was what the Guru in the Vedanta was doing. Here it is reasonless devotion, yeah, after having achieved this. Finally, we come to the Buddhist tradition. And there are these two schools. There's the southern school, also called the Theravada, wrongly called Hinayana. This was something that the Hina means something lower. This was given by, of course, those who are not the Hinayana. Yeah, so basically, it's the way of putting them down. They're really should be called Theravada, southern school of Buddhists. For them, a Bodhi, so they have this notion of the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva ideal in Theravada is basically somebody who has taken the resolve to be a Buddha in this life, as a state of mind. The Mahayana, on the other hand, for them, Bodhisattva means somebody who has taken the resolve to cultivate Bodhicitta, which means that personal liberation can be set aside for the liberation of all. Which means, finally, in some place, Sharat Chandra Chakravarti is speaking to Swamiji at some point and says, Swamiji says, see, I don't have any desire for liberation left. Of course, if a person has already attained, there is no desire for liberation left. But this burning compassion, yeah, so that all may become free. And then there is this discussion with Sharat Chandra Chakravarti. See, there is Swamiji says, see, yes, I understand that logically it does not make sense to think that there is only one jiva, there's this one being with all these various bodies. But think of the great heart of the person who wants this whole jiva to be free before seeking one's own liberation. Yeah. That is the Bodhisattva ideal that the Buddhists talk about. And in recent times, I mean, you see this probably best manifest in Swamiji, right? So there's, I mean, of course, people think of Thakur as somebody who is emotional. Thakur is a very, very smart person. Yeah, I mean, but Swamiji, after all, I mean, he's in one place while going to 1900, while around 1900, is going to Mayavati. End of 1900, early 1901, is going to Mayavati on the road. He says, এই মুখ্য বামুনটার প্রেমে পড়ে জীবনটা বরবাদ হয়ে গেল. So after having fallen in love with this mad Brahmin, mad illiterate Brahmin, my life has been destroyed. And then after that, right after that, he says, এরকম তো অনেক জীবন গেছে, এটা দিয়ে দিবেন. See, so many lives are gone. Just let me give this one. See this. In one place, Subhash Chandra Bose describes Swamiji as reckless in compassion. This is the kind of recklessness. Yeah. There's no, I mean, we have this Shiva, we talk about Shiva as an ideal. There is no calculation there. Somebody has asked for something, give it. immediately. Somebody, there is no what will it be, there is no thought. Somebody has asked, because there is no desire to hold on to anything in that being. So there is this reckless in compassion. Yeah. So this is supposed to be and then when he starts talking about it, he says, I mean, may I be born again and again if I can free. I mean, this is the bodhisattva ideal that comes up, and it's basically, I mean, when one sees these elements of the Buddha in its highest form coming through in Swamiji's character. Um, so so I mean, essentially, I mean, in one place, Swamiji is actually difficult. I mean, at some point, some level, somewhat difficult to understand because he's full of contradictions, full of extreme contradictions. And somehow or the other, it's one person. And it seems very consistent after you start studying that, yes, it's in this kind of a person of this kind of magnitude, such contradictions are essential. Yeah. What kind of contradictions? Yeah, I'll have to quote, there's this Niels Bohr, great physicist, Nobel laureate, one of the founders of quantum mechanics in the early 20th century. Says, see, the opposite of an ordinary truth is an ordinary falsehood. But the opposite of a great truth is another great truth. Yeah. So here in Swamiji's life, we see that at one point there is one letter to Mary Hill. Yeah. I think volume 5, somewhere page 72, 73, where he basically says that I am least concerned about about being nice and sweet to all the people so that it will enhance the work. I have no work below or beyond the sun. Yeah? So basically, this is saying this world is false with all its churches, chicaneries, its fair faces and false hearts. It's a complete denunciation of the world. Yeah? In all its forms. Yeah? Essentially, this is Jagat Mithyatva or Shunyata. Yeah? The Buddhist point. On extreme, yeah? There's nothing in the world that he can possibly covet. And then right after, in that same person says, may I be born again and again to serve this world. It's extreme contradictions. Yeah. So once we recognize it as completely false, and then basically sets up this whole organization to be of service. And in one lecture, Swami Ashokanji, he says, see, there's this man. How can somebody who is free have such extreme contradictions? I mean, you have these ideas. On the one hand, there is this complete giving up of the world. On the other, there's this complete identification and serving it as if it's one's own being. How can they simultaneously coexist? And how is it that how can we call such a person free? And then he basically said, look, freedom is something much deeper. It is not either of these. It is not typically, traditionally we used to describe it as saying that either this vaya negativa. Vaya negativa means Jagat Mithyatva or Shunyata. Either that or identity with the world. Sarvam Khalu Idam Brahma. One, either complete compassion or world negation. Either world full affirmation, that means there is this all, or there is nothing. One of these. But real freedom, and this is what Ashokanji explains, how to understand Swami. It's a beautiful lecture. It's called The Heart and Mind of Swami Vivekananda. It's a 1.5 hour or a little more. And unfortunately, I could not find that specific lecture afterwards. I heard it from somebody who was his disciple, had given it to me many 30 years back. But there was this one little very insightful comment. It says that the freedom lies in being completely capable of holding any of these opposing attitudes with full intensity. Yeah. Either full service, and then the next moment quit, and then this world is empty of substance. Yeah? Person who has freedom is not committed to one, either this or that, but can fully, with that full honesty, full sincerity, pick up either of these with equal freedom. So the freedom is to choose between either yes or no, and see that this finally there is this yes and no are finally emergent realities in human, in consciousness. They are not the ultimate reality, but some reality itself manifests sometimes as yes, sometimes as no. We call it reality, call it non-existence, call it existence. Words are a very faint shadow. But in Swamiji's life, you see that this in either extreme compassion or extreme world denial, and it's the Buddha in him that comes out. So we have, we have 3 minutes left. Okay, so let me just try to summarize what we have discussed so far. See, firstly, we took this Thakur's description of who cannot be an acharya, who is not supposed to be an acharya. And then we went to this highest ideal of who the teacher is. And the two basic things. One, complete spiritual fulfillment has been achieved by such a person. There is no trace of any desire or personal want left. Two, compassion. So in different traditions, these two are given various philosophical frameworks. It's not very important. So, for example, I think in Buddhism, this compassion is based on what is called pratitya samutpada. Dependent, this whole world, including my own being, arises or falls simultaneously with the rest of the world. So that's the cause of it. Anyway, these are philosophical doctrines. But the actual manifestation of that is one, there is no desire left at all for the world. But in spite of that, there is this extreme form of overflow of love that can take either the form of devotion or of great compassion for the whole world. Yeah? These various ways in which a spiritually realized person acts in the world, though it is not logically consistent, yeah, has been all these things together, yeah, not just one of them, yeah, but these various ways this can happen. Thakur gives it one word. It's called Vijnana. So that's I mean this word comes up now and then in various places, and we've tried to understand this in these ways. I mean, at least these are three examples. So a bodhisattva is an example of a Vijnani. A Jivan Mukta is an example of a Vijnani. Somebody who in the devotional school who's trying to who has realized and is calling it the fifth Purushartha or Pancha Purushartha is also Vijnana. So Vijnana is a kind of a term which encompasses these various ideals where the world is treated as part of one's being, but in the background of this supreme negation or supreme affirmation. Okay, so I think this is Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. I did not pause for any questions.
Is it possible to ask one question?
Yes.
Can you just expand on the Holy Mother's interpretation of the banana leaf? I just couldn't understand.
Oh, so basically, this is actually this passage from the Kathamrita. Thakur says, what exactly does it mean? How to live is jhoder into patar. So jhod is storm. Pata is leaf. Ito is, that means people have eaten on it. Uchishta. It has been eaten on and it has been thrown into the garbage bin. Means a kind of a useless leaf. Now suppose that leaf is picked up by some stormy wind from the garbage heap and is blown hither and thither. Yeah. That particular leaf, what does he connote? It basically connotes that the leaf does not have a will left of its own. Yeah. And now somebody asks mother, what does this mean? Thakur has given this jhode reto pata. I mean, very mystical kind of, very mystifying explanation. Yeah? But ask mother, what does it mean? The mother says, astitva. That means existence. That means you are there as an existent reality without personality. Astitva thakbe, vyaktitva thakbe.
Om Jananim
Sharadam
Sharadam
Devim
Devim
Ramakrishnan
Ramakrishnan
Jagadgurum
Jagagurum
Padapadme Tayo Shritva
Pranamami
Pranamami
Munu.
এটা বন্ধ করে দিই?
বলো।